Welcome, everybody, to this month's National Equine Health Conference call. I first want to thank the speakers for getting on the call today. And just as a reminder, this will be our last National Equine Conference call for the year as folks are traveling back from AAEP in December. We will not have a call at that time. So this will be our last call, and we will resume all calls in the new year. So for our last call, I have a couple announcements that I'd like to make before we get started. Just a reminder that the AAEP Infectious Disease Committee will be held during convention, and convention is coming up in December 5th to the 10th, December 6th to the 10th in Denver. There is a link in the agenda from today's call to the convention information. The AAEP Infectious Disease Committee will be meeting Sunday, December 7th at 11:30 a.m. For more information, please visit the AAEP convention website. Today, I would like to just give you some updates on screwworm, and then we'll go into some of the agenda items. So for today's purpose, I just wanted to call your attention to a couple things from USDA. USDA did publish recently the USDA screwworm playbook, and that is found on their website. As a reminder, you can also get the latest updates on their website. I will bring you now to the, I'm hoping you can see it. This is the Mexican website for the latest information regarding screwworm cases in Mexico. Currently, there's 808 active cases. You can kind of see that dark purple in the southern part of Mexico. Of the 808 cases, there's only 26 equine cases that are the active cases at this point in time. So again, this is the Mexican dashboard for those cases. I will now share to the next information that I wanted to call your attention to is the New World Screwworm information for veterinarians. Just a reminder that that webpage for the Food and Drug Administration is up and has information on the drugs and some of the information on the species and extra label use of the medications. So just again, calling your attention to that webpage for that purpose. Lastly, I just want to make sure you know where to find the screwworm playbook. It is on the New World Screwworm Emergency Response page. And if you scroll down, it does say the draft is available. Just a reminder, this is a draft. Anybody wishing to provide comments, USDA is suggesting all feedback be submitted to the FAD Prep comments at USDA. And as you see on the screen, the view draft response playbook, there is above that the email address for that. Just as a real quick to understand how they have put together their playbook, they have put out the infographic is available, and it has the key activities, specifically 8 key activities, a unified response, protecting unaffected areas, managing infested premises, managing New World screwworm in the wildlife, deploying traps and sterile flies, facilitating healthy animal movement, track and report activities, as well as assess and replenish resources. So again, for the purposes of this group, I would call your attention to the thing that we're most concerned with in the equine industry is the safe facilitation of interstate or international movement. And so we would be looking at the section 6, and there is a continuity of business document for folks to review regarding the timing for a certificate of veterinary inspection and the treatment of animals for the movement in and out of a infested zone. So with that, I just wanted to call your attention to those pieces of information for you regarding New World Screwworm, so you have an idea of what is available. At this time, I would say anyone with questions should refer to USDA and the New World Screwworm email address that is on the web page. So with that, I just want to open it up. Is there any comments or questions regarding New World Screwworm before we go into our next speaker? Okay, hearing none, I am going to transition this over to Dr. Mike Odian, who is the co-chair of the U.S. Animal Health Association Committee on Equine, and he's going to provide an update from last week's meeting and the activities of the Committee on Equine.
Thank you.
Dr. Odian. Yep, I can hear you now.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity to present. The Committee on Equine meeting was a good meeting, I heard. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend directly. There were 5 presentations made during the meeting. The first presentation was developing a national level equine population model for disease emergency planning and preparedness, presented by Dr. Palomer and Rao, and I apologize in advance if I butchered your last name. Basically, the summary on this presentation is that it's a disease modeling project designed to address the gap in the country's ability to plan and respond to equine disease emergencies. The goal is to develop a comprehensive national data set of equine operation locations and population distributions. The information would be vital for effective emergency preparedness, disease outbreak response, and disaster planning. Current databases are incomplete to capture all types of equine operations. The central goal of the project is to use advanced geospatial and artificial intelligence tools to develop a national level equine population model that can support both state and federal animal health officials for management of disease outbreaks or responding to natural disasters. The outcome of this integrated approach is to set up a national scale maps showing probable locations and densities of equine operations. The next presentation was Sick Horse Import Update by Dr. Scher. She presented data on sick horse imports in fiscal year 25, which included information about the numbers of sick imported horses by air, countries of origin of the horses, and summary of the horses referred to approved clinic for medical care, and the types of diagnoses they received. Dr. Pizzell McCluskey presented updates on CEM, EIA outbreak, and EVA updates. She presented an overview of the outbreaks of CEM, a significant outbreak of CEM in Florida, first identified in May 2024, had response activities that continued through most of 2025. The index premises in Orange County, Florida was a large entertainment type premise with total equine population of 96 head. An additional 12 geldings that had left the index farm between 2017 and 2024 were found to have T. equinox positive trace during the out testing on premises in multiple states. The epidemiological investigation indicates that the infection had been present on the farm in Florida since at least November 2017, with the source likely to have originally been one of the infected geldings, although a definitive source has not yet been identified. In the calendar year 2024, there were 147 EIA cases confirmed in the U.S., located in 12 states. The Committee on Equine also requested an update on the status of the USDA APHIS Equine Viral Arteriitis Uniform Standards. The 2004 EVA Uniform Methods and Rules have been revised to a uniform standards document. It is currently going through the clearance process with USDA APHIS. Although an expected timeline for the document completed review and approval is not yet available. Update provided for vesicular stomatitis virus. Confirmation October 31st, 2025 by National Veterinary Services Laboratory. Confirmed the findings of New Jersey virus strain in horses on 2 separate premises in Cochise County, Arizona. Then there was a point of care testing update by Eric Mendoza and Nick Tran from Fluxergy. They provided the update on development and regulatory compliance for the point of care platform and assays for the equine industry. They specifically reaffirmed the commitment to support USAHA states USDA CVB requirements. The company is committed to USAHA, and it can be illustrated how the company supports the USAHA's 2024 point of testing resolution number 8. The demonstrated this by the software now includes sample details with veterinary names. All current equine practices that use the testing have assigned accredited veterinarians, and the company continues active engagement with the Center for Veterinary Biologics, state animal health officials for transparency and alignment. For customers onboarding, the continuous education, the company emphasizes on meeting compliance requirements with both USDA and state authorities, especially for equine reportable diseases. And then last but not least, Dr. Flynn did a presentation on high performance resolution. Basically, the industry is seeking support for addressing temporary international movements of equids. Equine athletes compete around the world representing their home countries at international equestrian events. FEI is the international governing body for horse sports recognized by IOC and the IPC. USEF is the national governing body for horse sports in the United States. USEF is responsible for developing and selecting equestrian athletes for national teams for international competitions. In 2024, the United States hosted 501 of the over 4,500 international events sanctioned by FEI. Equine and human athletes representing the United States travel the world to compete at FEI-sanctioned events. In 2024, a total of 424 human athletes and 1,001 equine athletes represented the United States at international competitions in 28 countries. But some of the U.S. athletes represented the United States and international. But some of the U.S. riders have a subset of horses stabled overseas due to barriers posted by USDA international movement rules and regulations. Dr. Flynn presented many of the challenges for an international movement of horses. She also presented many of the FEI rules, regulations, and biosecurity measures in place to address those challenges to the committee members. based on the above-mentioned challenges and recognized biosecurity measures and practices implemented for the subpopulation of high health, high performance horses competing at FEI competitions, the U.S. industry is seeking support for the USDA recognition of high health subpopulation of horses as outlined in the Lower Terrestrial Animal Health Code, Chapter 4.17. So after all these wonderful presentations, the business session ensued. The SAHO EHM Incident Response Guide document for state animal health officials. The updates were passed by committee membership. It is currently being reviewed and approved by the USAHA Board of Directors. Hopefully, the updated version should be released in the next 30 days or so. 3 resolutions were passed out of the committee. One was the contagious equine metritis import PCR testing for overgrowth conditions. The second was an addition of equine paraplasmosis PCR testing for imported equids. And the third was the high health, high performance horse resolution. That's all I have at this point.
Thanks, Dr. Odian, for that complete report. Much appreciated. Are there any questions regarding the report and the committee meetings and the committee meeting and the 3 resolutions that were passed during that U.S. Animal Health Association meeting? I did receive a question regarding the modeling study. That was a study funded by NADPREP funding. So that is a NADPREP funded project that was done by the folks from Colorado State University. I am looking. Any other questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Dr. Odian. I'm going to transition now to our USDA equine epidemiologist, Dr. Angela Pelzo-McCluskey. I am going to turn it over to her, even though we really don't want to hear that there's another disease coming into the United States. Take it away, Angela.
Sorry, guys. So sorry. I don't think I have the right screen that I'm sharing. Let me try this again, Katie. 2 seconds.
Angela, that one did work.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope, that one didn't work. That's
One more
showing us.
time.
Yep.
One more time. This Zoom doesn't like USDA stuff. I just want to let people know that. How about now?
You're good.
All right,
you.
Great. Thanks, guys. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share some information with you today on our current situation with vesicular stomatitis. I am going to give you a little bit of background only because we often have new people that come onto this call all the time, which is great, and may not have much background with VSV, like many of us unfortunately do. So we'll just get everybody caught up to speed to start with, and then I'll also give you the update on the current situation, which you got a little snippet of from Dr. Odian, since that was going down right during USAHA that we were announcing that. Let's see if I can advance this. Okay. Did that advance, Katie?
Yes, ma'am. It did.
Okay, fantastic. So just as some background, this is a vesiculovirus, and it's transmitted by biting insects, usually certain species of biting flies that we'll talk about. And trade-wise, it's a disease of the Americas. So the rest of the world doesn't want this, which is why for many years we've had trade restrictions in the Americas, specifically related to horses coming from the U.S. To other parts of the world. So it concerns a lot of our trading partners in the other parts of the world. The main 2 serotypes that we get in the United States are VSV New Jersey virus and VSV Indiana 1. There are Indiana 2 and 3 that are usually in the northern portion of South America. But New Jersey and Indiana 1 are usually either one or both viruses that we get here in the United States when we do have incursion years. The reason we're talking about it is because it does primarily affect horses. Horses are usually more than 95% of our cases when we get incursions in the United States. Cattle are also heavily affected, but less so than horses. And there are a million different reasons why that can happen that we won't go into today. But our species, horses, are usually the species where we have the most clinical cases. And so it usually changes our ability to move horses interstate when we have affected states and changes in movement requirements between states in order to move safely. Many other species can be affected, certainly swine. I would say the next most common species when we get an outbreak in the United States are in that camelid family. So the llamas and alpacas, we will get lesions in. We do see lesions sometimes in wildlife, and humans can become infected. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. What's weird about this virus is that we get outbreaks in the US sporadically with incursion years, followed by expansion years. It may stay a couple years and then it goes away for several more. So they come in these cyclical incursions of every 2 to 10 years or so. But historically, we've had this occur in the US since at least the early 1900s. And there's even some descriptions in the literature about cases in cattle and horses during Civil War times. So this has been a very long-standing thing that we get hit with on a regular basis. Since about the 1980s, we're very used to getting our VSV outbreaks primarily in the southwestern portion of the United States and also in the Rocky Mountain region. It tends to start south and move northward, and it follows the waterways. Usually we get this during the summer months, and then it continues on into the fall. And again, we have the moving waterways that tend to move the fly larvae, especially the black fly larvae. And then around standing water, we have cases that are caused by the biting midges. So the main 3 species that we think of as competent vectors, especially in the US, are the black flies, the sand flies, and the biting midges, or the Culicoides species. Although any flying insect can transmit this just through as a fomite by landing on the lesions where the virus is. The vesicles themselves, why it's called vesicular stomatitis, it causes vesicles. So these are blisters, and they typically occur in all the places that I've listed here. And you can see it any one of these places or multiples of these places on a single animal. So the lips, muzzle, and tongue are common locations for the oral lesions. We do get on the inner pinna of the ear, some draining crusty lesions there. The teats and sheath of horses also can have these lesions, and sometimes even the ventral midline, where we get fly strike there on the ventral midline. And the coronary bands are another location where we often see vesicles develop. If you have the oral lesions, you're going to see hypersalivation and anorexia. They really don't want to eat, and they may have some weight loss secondary to those oral lesions that are very painful. That's the reason why you have the hypersalivation and the lack of eating. And then the coronary band lesions can sometimes cause lameness as well. So those are some key signs that our horse owners will usually see: that hypersalivation, horse not wanting to eat, and or lameness associated with the coronary bands. As I said, the virus itself is present in the lesions. It's not systemically in the horse itself. So contact with those lesions, and when the lesions rupture, that fluid that's coming from the lesions is loaded with virus. And so we can get transmission by fomites, shared water troughs, shared feed buckets, feeding equipment, certainly bits and tack, and direct contact between animals, things like shared water. All of that is going to spread within the herd directly from the lesions of animals that got the lesions from the biting flies, right? So several different ways to transmit within a premises. We don't really need to do anything specific for the horses unless they're really struggling to eat or drink, and then they may need supportive care. But this is a self-limiting infection, and there's really no animal-to-animal spread once those lesions have healed up and the virus is gone from the lesions. As I mentioned, this is zoonotic. So we do have a very long history of horse owners, veterinarians. I myself have had this disease when a horse blew it in my face. I really don't want any of you on this call to ever experience this. This doesn't feel like anything you've ever felt before. It's not like flu. It's not like COVID. It's not like anything else. Fever, extreme fatigue, bad muscle aches. You feel like you can't lift your arms off the bed that you're lying flat on. Basically, you are out for about 3 to 5 days, unable to move. It's pretty dramatic, and I don't recommend it to anyone. Keep your face out from in front of horses that are slobbering or might have this disease. Wear gloves, wash your hands, all of those wonderful biosecurity things that Katie tells us about on a regular basis to be careful of. When you're handling these types of animals or even suspect cases, we want our veterinarians and our horse owners to know how to protect themselves and their family when they're handling these horses. This is a reportable disease to state and federal animal health officials. The good news is it's been a little bit less impactful trade-wise the past few years. It was delisted by the World Organization for Animal Health in about 2015. So we did get a little bit of a trade break, but honestly, it still is a trade causing disaster when we get it, and we get restrictions placed on the US when we have it. So just to remind you, this is not a blip on a lip. I get a lot of blip on a lip pictures with people wondering whether it's vesicular stomatitis. These are usually pretty dramatic. So these are some common sites where we get lesions, and you can finally see on here how involved those lesions are. So the crusty muzzle, the sloughing tongue, either in chunks or all the way the whole tongue. You'll see the hypersalivation and the foaming at the mouth first, and you can see the lip lesions on this particular horse. That horse is going to have tongue lesions when you open that up. The internal pinna there and that crusty, nasty, oozy lesion, and certainly the coronary bands are usually quite inflamed, and you'll see some lameness with that. So these are all common locations and what the actual lesions are going to look like. Again, they are usually pretty involved. Okay, so where does this come from? Typically, VSV circulates in southern Mexico, usually around the Veracruz area, and they get it year-round between livestock and the competent vectors, the flying vectors that they have down there. And they just see cases all the time, every year. It's really not seasonal for them. In certain years, and we're starting to learn more about what types of climate variables might bolster this, but in certain years where the climate is right, we have infected vectors that move northward from southern Mexico, and you'll usually first start to see cases in the northern Mexican tier states. When that happens over a winter time, then in the next spring we usually get hit. It'll pop over our border, and those flying vectors with the virus will go ahead and move the virus, both flying directly and then along the waterways as they move northward. And then once we get it on the US side, it usually follows those waterways like I described, and we get epidemic transmission northward and outward from that spot. So southwestern US, Rocky Mountain region, those are typically where we get hit. So this just kind of catalogs for you some recent outbreaks we've had in history. You can see the cyclical nature of this. And again, they come in groups of years. So 2004, 5, and 6, that was all exactly the same strain of virus that overwintered 2 winters and came back out the following spring and summer. So that does happen where we can have it stay here in the US. Although we've never acquired any sort of endemicity for this. It's just an incursion, the overwintering, and sometimes the expansion years. But you can see it varies for how many cases we get, how many infected premises. Some years we've just had little blips that pop up and then it's gone. And other years like 2019, we have massive outbreaks. The 2019 year actually is the highest volume of premises infected in the last 50 years of recorded history. So it was really significant outbreaks. And you can see it kind of teeter-totters between when we have New Jersey virus that enters, and sometimes we get an incursion of VSV Indiana. And then some years we get both viruses. So those are 2 separate incursions at the same time bracket. The last outbreak we had that I've described it on this call before was in 2023, where we had California primarily affected, which was really unusual. California doesn't usually get hit. That started in the south, it moved up with the infected vectors into Southern California, which is usually well protected by a heat dome and drought conditions. And in 2022 to 2023, they had a lot of water that supported movement of those vectors and expansion of the vectors. And we got a pretty big outbreak there that moved northward through the waterways. So that was pretty interesting. And I would say this year is just as interesting for what's happening now. Our current response procedures, just so you know what we do when we get this, is based around diagnosis first, quarantining of the affected premises and animals, and as aggressive of mitigation strategies on the premises as we can muster. So the diagnosis, you have to have the compatible clinical signs, the pictures you've seen, and confirmation by diagnostic testing. Once we get a positive confirmed case in a certain county, the horses in that county don't necessarily have to be tested. If they show up with lesions, they can just become a presumptive positive case and go under their quarantine without needing to do testing. I would say probably about half of our horse cases, when we have that happen, the owners do want to test and they ask to test. So sometimes we get additional testing just to confirm what we know was already there. Whether you're a confirmed case or a presumptive positive case, the whole premises with all susceptible species is going to be quarantined under state quarantine. And that quarantine is currently a minimum of 14 days from the onset of lesions in the last affected animal on the premises. So basically you have all the animals that start to break. We only have a proportion of the herd that usually breaks with the lesions that you can see. And when the last one is seen with lesions, we start the 14-day countdown from that last case. So if it's only one case, you can get out of quarantine pretty quick. If you keep having ongoing transmission in that herd, especially in a herd of cattle where you can't really control much of how they're being managed, you may end up with a longer quarantine period just because you're waiting for all the cases to stop. We do recommend that lesioned animals get isolated away from others. Again, that's to prevent that within herd spread with the fomites and the shared water and that sort of thing, the direct contact with the lesions. And we try to help the owners implement some very aggressive vector mitigation, so fly control on the premises. But this is really variable based on what the owners can do and what their resources are. When we do get outbreaks, I usually post weekly situation reports publicly to the APHIS VS website. And there is one up now from the initial finding for this year. And there will be updates posted there when I have them for you. So here's the current situation, which Dr. Odian mentioned already. On October 31st, we did have our National Veterinary Services Laboratory confirm 2 different cases on 2 different premises. Both premises were located in Cochise County, Arizona. These premises are actually about 40 miles apart, the way the crow flies. So these are 2 completely separate premises. They're not neighboring at all. And it was only horses affected on each premises. There were both horses and cattle present on both premises, but 1 horse on each premises had lesions. And we were able to get PCR positive and sequencing results of VSV New Jersey out of both of those horses. The update that I got just this morning from our state veterinarian there in Arizona, Dr. Ryan Walker, is that both of these premises completed their quarantine and were released yesterday. So at this point, we're in a holding pattern, assessing if we're going to get new cases either in the southern portion of Arizona or other locations. So certainly we're on high alert and investigating anything that presents with lesions pretty much anywhere in the US right now. We have an enhanced surveillance protocol going on now. For anything presenting with lesions, we will be testing anything that presents with lesions to make sure it's not a case. And typically we can't call this particular incident done until at least 30 days have passed from the last quarantine release with no new cases. So we're going to continue to be in that enhanced surveillance protocol for a bit yet. What's really strange about this outbreak is we have never, up until this point, had an incursion of VSV into the United States during the fall. That is weird. That has not happened to us before. So usually we get incursions in the spring and summer, and then the cases can continue through the fall because the vectors are still active. So we don't know what this is going to do. We don't know how big or small this is going to be. So I can't really give you any predictions on that since we've never had a fall incursion before. The other thing that was a little bit frustrating was that Because Mexico is working very hard on screwworm surveillance and response, as they should, they have not been reporting any VSV cases, and so we could not see this coming at us. I suspect very strongly that there are probably cases of VSV the past few months in the northern Mexican tier states, and this is spillover. None of the horses or cattle on either of these two premises had any movements in the last several months, so this was an incursion of infected vectors with the virus that came to the animals somehow. Certainly we can have smuggled equids or other smuggled animals that could bring virus and then spread locally, so that could have happened too. We have no evidence of that at this point, but that's a possibility. The movement of vectors alone and the distance between these two affected premises really supports the idea that we had infected vectors move into the United States from the south. So, Katie, that is all that I have. I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions.
So, Angela, I do have one that came in regarding the 2 Arizona premises in that area. Are there any environmental concerns or considerations that may have factored in or played into these cases?
Great question. I'm so glad you guys asked that. Thank you, whoever asked that. Yes, so Cochise County, our residents down there are telling us that this year, just in the last month or so, they have had a lot of rain, which is very unusual for southern Arizona at this point in the season. Their rains should have occurred earlier in the summer with their monsoons, and most recently they've had a lot of water, they've had a lot of insects. So we did have some climate factors that were supporting insects in that region when normally they wouldn't really be that well supported at this part in the season.
Are there any other geographic areas that may be at risk with the climate factors similar to that at this time?
I would love for my modeling folks with our VSV Grand Challenge project to be able to address that. They're still trying to figure out why we got a fall incursion. So that's a new one on us. I think if you live in a region or you know in your region that you're getting more water, you're getting insects later in the year, in the Southwest or in the Rocky Mountain region, those areas are probably what we need to be watching really closely. Although because of animal movements, horses move a lot, cattle move sometimes. We could have had animal movements that could move this to other locations without those environmental factors really being part of the situation. So I think it's really hard to say, Katie. Our climate variables over the years have been in flux, and certainly our modeling teams are looking closer into that to try to get more predictability on this. But we did not see this one coming, and we didn't really have a shot to see it coming since Mexico wasn't reporting any cases.
One other question, hold on a second, let me see if I can get this. Okay, have you seen any, wait a minute, hold on a second. Trying to understand this one, give me 1 second. Oh, are horses the only surveillance for vesicular stomatitis?
No, certainly not. So any of our susceptible species, which were all the ones I listed early on, that present with anything that looks potentially like a vesicular lesion, those are tested. And so horses that present are tested, but also cattle, swine, llamas, alpacas, yaks, you name it. We submit throughout the year on suspected lesioned cases across the country and do that testing to rule that out. And the main reason we have to do that, especially in those ruminants and swine, is because those lesions can also look exactly like foot and mouth disease. So it's part of our normal foreign animal disease surveillance testing that anything that presents potentially vesicular lesion is going to get tested first to rule out FMD. Horses, of course, don't get FMD, so their vesicular lesions are either VSV or something different, like trauma or chemical burns or photosensitization. All of those things can look similar. But we do a lot of surveillance testing in all species throughout the year. Usually we do about 150 to 200 FAD investigations of vesicular nature per year across the country, specifically looking for first FMD, rule that out, but also for vesicular stomatitis.
Okay, I think I misunderstood the question. Sorry, I think what they're asking is if there's vectors that are tested.
That's tough to do. So we did actually send our VSV Grand Challenge team, one of our vector collaborators, is presently in Arizona this week, and they're doing some trapping in Cochise County to try to see if we can get any vectors and identify virus out of them. But we're a little behind the power curve. These horses broke with their lesion onset around October 24th. So those vectors may be gone or dead. And it's also really difficult unless you're on the premises itself, and our teams are not, because those premises locations are PII, they're personally identifiable information. And so we don't share that information, state and federal, with outside folks. You can sometimes find vectors on the premises that will have virus on them, but that's also pretty difficult. The way we trap them sometimes is also challenging to try to get virus out of vectors after the fact, although sometimes we do.
Are there any other questions? Those are all the ones I have right now. Are there any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Okay, well, I'm hoping, Angela, this is a one and done, or shall I say two and done, and we don't have any more, similar to the 2010 Arizona situation. So hopefully, no offense, that we don't get you back here on the next call, unless you can tell us it's completely over.
That sounds great to me. Well, watch the USDA website on the VSV page for any updates or situation reporting. That's where we'll post it, and that'll also go through the Equine Disease Communication Center, and they'll give you the link to the posts as well. So we'll continue to share information that way so that you have the updates. So stay tuned on that.
Thanks, Angela. We appreciate your time and getting on the call today. Welcome back. And any other comments, questions? Again, I just want to remind you that we will not have a call in December. I will just make one final note, because USDA just announced that they're opening of a sterile fly dispersal facility in Tampico. I don't know if I said that right. Mexico. Tampico, Mexico. So they did open that facility. So that press release just came out by USDA for the last minute here to announce. With that, I want to thank all our speakers, and I thank everyone this year for all of their recommendations of topics or speakers. And I wish you a great rest of the year, happy holiday season, and I look forward to talking to you all in the new year. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.